I'm back at it again, breaking down yet another team's finish. Today, I'll be breaking down the Texas Rangers on today's action packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we are your number one source for fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Matthew Ane. You can find me on Twitter or X or whatever you call it at Matthew_Ane. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the bell below. It'll subscribe you to the channel and give you a notification every time we drop a new episode. Also, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you may listen. If you want a little bit more than what we offer on this 30-minute podcast, check us out on Subtext and become a member of the Diamond Club, where you'll be able to get way more features than we offer here. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Please place a $5 bet on, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, guys, we got a good one. I'll be dragging just a tad. Had a good night at a buddy's wedding last night, so please bear with me. Congratulations to Millie and JP. Love you guys. So happy for you guys getting married. But let's get in baseball and start getting in it. We're breaking down the Rangers. The Rangers did not have the season we all expected, especially after winning the World Series the year prior. And they finished with a nice 78 and 84 record. By nice, really not nice, especially for the returning champs essentially. And I don't know what really went wrong. Corey Seager, yes, was hurt this season, as was, Josh Jung and Evan Carter. But, you know, as a whole, as a unit, they didn't play well. Corey Seager had a monster season when he played. Semien had a slow start, if to my recollection. Why? And a whole bunch more. So we're going to break down each player, kind of talk about next year's views. Or am I worried? Am I not worried? And so on and so forth. So let's get in it. Let's talk about Corey Seager and his monstrous season for when he was healthy, at least. My guy had about 475 at bats. He had 68 runs, 21 doubles, 30 bombs, 74 ribs. Only a stolen base. Batted about 278 on the year, 353 OBP, a slug of 512, an OPS of 864. Now, those are solid numbers, especially for the amount of at bats, quite honestly. But the thing is, I would have expected more in the runs and ribbies category. I mean, last year he had literally 2 less at bats, and he had 88 runs versus his 68. He even had, 20 less RBIs this year, 22 actually, and 3 less home runs, which that one is kind of forgivable. He hit 30 in that short amount of time. I'm not mad. But the runs and ribbies speak volumes to how the team was performing as a whole. And Corey Seager did all he could, except for, maybe making some better health choices. I don't know. But ultimately, the dude was a fantasy stud. You just had to wait around for him, unfortunately. I think he missed the first month of baseball. And, it was a real drag in those regards, right? Because okay, I spent all this money on this guy, and I can't get him even on the field, and that's the rough part. So, but that's kind of built into Corey Seager as a whole. Why wasn't essentially super thrilled, even though he was fantastic, to to draft him essentially. And I lied about missing the whole month. So he played about 27 games in April, 25, then June was 20. It was really just more of the last month when we needed him, because he only played about 2 games, and that was pretty rough after having such a, good start. And, the way he finished off the season was pretty good. So I look at it like this with Corey Seager for next year. I don't think he's worth, a second round pick like he was going this year. Still going to be a top top 3 round pick for me, maybe more in the 3rd round for me. Guy has super elite power. He's only 30. He's going to be 31 next year. I'm not ready to start saying, "Oh, Father Time is, coming up like I'm in Scream, ready to, murder his career." But, we're getting around that age, and I just that drop off isn't here yet. I hope the team kind of takes a step forward. I hope injuries kind of prevail. I hope a bunch of guys figure things out, because I like the team as a whole, right? Corey Seager is better than this. So I look at it where I'm just gonna be like, all right, you're gonna, I'm not gonna pay such a high price just in case this is the reality of the Rangers. But you know, I'm also not going to, shy away from the talent either because the dude can put up some serious numbers if you really let him. So it's going to be an interesting kind of ride with him. It's not like any of the underlying stats were off by even a hair. Like, you just look at it. He's got red across his across the board when it comes to his baseball savant page. So Corey Seager, I think, will be just fine. It's a matter of will the team around him be better next year so that he can produce more in the runs and ribbies category. Because essentially, it's controllable because he can put the bat to the ball. But guys need to get on base and also drive him home. So if they're not doing that, you can only do so much at that point. But that will kind of decide how his value is going to be going into next year. So let's hope that we hear some things from the team, some positive things where they're going to take the season, learn, and move on. Well, let's move on. Let's talk about Marcus Semien, another guy that kind of had a down year in my opinion. Finished strong, but did have a down year in my opinion. He had a 237 batting average this year, which was pretty wild. This happens from time to time. Like you look at his career, like 2022, he finished with 248 batting average, and then you look at it again in 2020, which I don't count, 223. But then, you see 2018 and 2017 where he's had like a 250, but a 237 is pretty rough. Now, like I said, the second half was a lot better than the first, but he really did have a down year out, even though the runs are pretty impressive. So he had 650 at bats, he had 101 runs, he had 27 doubles, 2 triples, 23 bombs, 74 ribs, 8 stolen bases. And like I said, was batting at 237, a 308 OBP, a slug of 391, and OPS of 699. So, like, Semien, everybody's probably like, oh my God, this guy, age is catching up. Yes, he's 33. Do not get me wrong. He is definitely on the older side. I'm not ready to like bail out on this kid either. I mean, you look at him and I call him kid, but he's literally like a year younger than me. Uh, but you look at him, you just go, okay, cool, dude. Like, I understand that father, like that you're getting up there, but like, I'm not ready to bail yet. You know, there is a whole bunch of things that still support that he's good. It's not like he's always been like this powerhouse guy. He doesn't really have hard contact. It's really, he's more of like he just hits the ball really well, and his launch angle is pretty great, and it just goes over the fence. 23 home runs isn't atrocious, in all honesty. I'm not mad at that performance whatsoever. But you draft him to have the 25 plus, with that upside of possibly hitting 30. Like last year, he had 29. It was perfect. But he also had 122 runs and 100 ribs, whereas like he did have 101 runs this year, but the 74 ribs is just not great. Guys need to get on base for him to be able to produce things like that. I don't have the stat of if he's left, how many guys he's left on base, but I can't see it being too much. Maybe with the batting average, maybe it's a possibility, but ultimately, he does take advantage of opportunities, and the team as a whole seems to be down in certain categories. So, let's just take it like this. It's not an ugly season. Maybe we're not going to see a 25 home run season from him again. But, if we're still getting like 100 and 100, back up to like 250, 260, hopefully 270 where he was the year before, then we should have better production from him overall and still be a valuable fantasy asset. He again falls down probably to the third round where I think he was being drafted in the second. And, it's going to be a later third round, but I think there's a discount built in. But, I'm not really scared. I'm not going to shy away from him just yet. I need to, take a look at, other things like, what is he doing in the off season? Are we hearing anything where he's, needs to go to drive line, or, is he going to drive line to kind of correct things? So, how do I put this? He is just essentially somebody that you just got to keep an eye on it. His bat speed was down this year too, at a 68.3 mile per hour, whereas the year before they actually don't have the stat, but available for the last couple years. But his bat speed is something to keep an eye on. Let's hope that he finds a way to improve it, because this is exactly what happened with spit it out, Paul Goldschmidt, where we saw the decrease in bat speed, and then essentially like you watched him fall off a cliff. And I don't think we're there yet. He's probably got one more season left in him, and I think then we're gonna have to dip out on this kid. But ultimately, Marcus Semien I think is gonna be just fine for next year. Again, we're gonna have to reevaluate. I'm going to do some rankings. I'm do a little bit deeper diving, and I'm going to see if I'm hearing anything out of of what he's going to be doing in the offseason, essentially, to improve on this. Coming up next, we're gonna cover Wyatt Langford and what exactly went wrong there. Adolis Garcia, and again, what went wrong there, and then a bright spot, even though he was hurt for most of the season, Josh Jung, and so much more coming up next. Are you taking that dream vacation this year, but dreading the cost? With Ibotta, you get cash back on all your purchases, so you can spend more time making memories this summer and less time dreaming about them. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back on every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of different items from groceries, beauty supplies, even toys. So make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns up to $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, a flight you've been eyeing, a fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't really amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw right to your bank account or PayPal or gift cards. Simply add offer in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 to try out Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back. And use the code LOCKEDONMLB, and that's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB. Are you watching Fox Sports and ESPN on your TV all day? Have you had to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or free on the Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Introducing the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast Diamond Club on Subtext, your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. Get real-time alerts right to your phone, including waiver wire, not waiver, I'm still thinking I'm in season, redraft rankings, dynasty rankings, prospect rankings, sleepers, breakouts, busts, so much more. Everything you're going to need to get ready for 2025 and bring home another championship, and we promise we'll get you there. Guys, check us out. Links in the description below. You get a free 2 weeks when you join, so check us out. All right, we're getting back in this. Like I promised right at the top there. We're going to talk about what went wrong with Wyatt Langford. And, spring really shot up, this kid's value essentially. He had a monster spring, literally historic. I think he finished off with 6 or 7 home runs in spring. And honestly, couldn't bring it home. We looked at, you look at it and you go, man, he was going literally in the 5th or 6th round, and he completely flopped if you really look at his season as a whole. So you look at 2024 and you go, okay, 499 at bats, 74 runs, 25 doubles, 4 triples, 16 bombs, 74 ribs, 19 stolen bases, and batted .253, an OBP of 325, a slug of 415, and an OPS of 740. So there's some bright spots in it, but in his season, but there's also some downside too. Okay, the power, where did it go? Where is that? We expected a lot more, not only because of what we saw in spring, but because of his his batting profile, right? Like 2023 in the minors, through 200 at bats, not even 161 at bats, he had 10 home runs. That pace is, not even relatively close in the bigs this year. Now maybe it's going to take him a little time to adjust to, big league talent, and that's fair, and it's a fair expectation. Next year we'll bring him a step forward, which is fine. We all just kind of bought into the hype, and that's, our fault as the, content creator. And, we were fooled, and we apologize for that. But, you gotta be able to walk away from the season and look and see, okay, what went wrong, and, how should we adjusting for next year, right? So next year, obviously he's gonna fall. He's gonna fall probably to he'll still be a top 100 pick, but probably towards the 100 range. And I'm willing to take a shot on him at that point. If I'm getting around picking around 90s or mid 80s, I'm gonna be fine with trying to go after him. It's gonna be a better price, not a 5th round pick where he's a top 50 player essentially. I can kind of get him for like a seventh or eighth, and I'd be really happy with that as my OF3. Whereas in some leagues, he was going as your OF1 or OF2, depending on how you know, built your team and what your confidence was in Wyatt Langford. So, you know, I'm going to look at it like this for next year. I think he's going to be fine in the power department. I think that's going to climb. You know, I think that, you know, he's going to just take a step forward as a whole, right? So, like, average exit velocity was at 89.6 miles an hour. It's still better than Luis Robert, who's known for his power. You know, his xWOBA was a 333. His X batting average was really more of a 260, even though he posted a 253. You know, slug was a 434. He's battling the ball about 9.3% of the time, which is pretty fantastic. Creating hard contact 43.4% of the time. You know, I just want to see him, you know, do a little bit better in those categories. And I like the fact that he stole bases and was able to really produce in those regards. So, you know, Wyatt Langford is somebody that that I'm pretty excited for next year. And I like the price of next year. I think we were all just, you know, a year too early. That spring training really, you know, got us all hot and bothered, essentially. So, you know, we're gonna keep breaking him down. You know, I can't wait to do the rankings. You know, he's obviously going to be like a lower end, you know, OF3, if not your OF4. And, you know, I think that a lot of people are going to feel burned, and we're going to get a nice discount on Wyatt Langford for 2025, unless he starts going off in spring training again, and then everybody will be back in. But I'm letting you know right here, right now, I'm not out on him. So you shouldn't be either. But, you know, we're just going to have to change our expectations. I think expectations for 2025, I think will probably be about 25 home runs. I think it'll be probably around, you know, a batting average of 260, 265. I think that, you know, stolen bases are a fair thing that we can expect from him, at least, you know, 20. And, you know, runs and ribbies are going to be the same case that like I've talked about with Marcus Semien and Corey Seager and everybody else that we're going to be talking about today, because, you know, that's kind of more of a team thing than it is, you know, an individual thing. You can only do so much. You can't drive yourself home every single time unless you're hitting about 100 home runs, and nobody does that, obviously. And, you know, on top of that, you need people on base to create ribbies. So, you know, it's a tricky situation. I hope the team bounces back as a whole. There's a lot of names on this team that I don't think is going to allow the team production to be where it was and the record to be where it was this season, you know, for next year. So I think we should be getting better production. So Wyatt Langford, I think, is going to come at a value, like I was saying. Let's sneak in Adolis Garcia, who honestly was a true disappointment. I was drafting him as a top 10 outfielder in a lot of places. I was totally comfortable going with him to be my OF1, and unfortunately, it didn't pan out whatsoever. You know, you look at Adolis Garcia's season in totalitarian, sorry, as a whole, and you know it's kind of weak. 580 at bats, 68 runs, 27 doubles, 25 home runs, 85 ribs, 11 stolen bases, batted 224, super underwhelming. You know, an OBP of 284, a slug of 400, and an OPS of 684. Like, you know, the bright spot, still managed to get 25 home runs. You know, obviously 2023 was an outlier where he had 39. I think we were probably more expecting like 30 to 35, which I totally would have been okay with. The runs and ribbies, obviously, it's a trend with this team. You know, nobody really posted those kind of numbers. So again, the team needs to take a step forward. You know, the stolen bases, you know, I think those days are definitely behind us, especially him being 31, going to be 32 next year. And, you know, I'm not exactly sure what to expect from him, because it was a serious, you know, swing of the pendulum, essentially. Like, you know, it was one extreme to the other, right? So like you look at like 2022, where he had 605 at bats, 88 runs, 34 doubles, 5 triples, 27 home runs, 101 ribbies, 25 stolen bases, and he batted 250. So, you know, it's weird, right? Like the power numbers aren't far off, like it's two more. Um, you know, runs and ribbies were there, where and he had way more stolen bases, where we didn't see that in the next season, where he only had 9, but he hit 39 home runs. I think 27 is a fair expectation of him. I think that maybe even 25, and there might even be a decline. I don't know exactly what's going on. You know, he's always been like a strikeout guy. You know, his last 2 seasons he had 40 walks and 65 walks, to a comparison of 183 strikeouts and 175 strikeouts. So like that hasn't really changed, because he had 45 walks this year and 177 strikeouts. He just was hitting the ball so much that, you know, it made a difference, essentially, where there was a difference in what his batting average was, because he was at least be able to put the bat to the ball. So the strikeout numbers didn't really affect him as that new age baseball player. But it is what it is. I think that Adolis, is going to fall. I'm obviously not going to draft him as a top one or two. I think for me, he's going to be a three. I'm kind of scared him going into age 32 and then having a massive drop off in the batting average category. I think really hurts his value if we're going to see a guy that's just swinging for the fences every single time and is not performing in the batting average category, and he's not getting the home runs like a Kyle Schwarber, but having the same batting average. That's where his value kind of drops off for me. Coming up next, I want to break down Josh Jung, Evan Carter, and Jacob deGrom. What are my expectations for them next season? And that's coming up next. Hey, NFL fans, you can start this season with a big win and a big return at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place all your bets. Speaking of which, you might as well make that bet count by betting against the Giants at all costs. Everybody but Malik Neighbors, you can pretty much throw in a same game parlay and go right against it. How many interceptions is Daniel Jones going to throw? Is he going to hit the rushing numbers? What's going on with Devin Singletary? Are you going to do the over or under on that? Betting against the Giants, I feel like it is a fair bet. So do that and make that $5 bet count. You can get started with it. Once you place that $5 bet too, you'll get a $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, guys, latter half of the show, and I'm excited. I do want to cover Mr. Josh Jung. And Josh Jung obviously was hurt for most of this season. Very disappointing. I had high hopes for this kid. I thought he was going to be fantastic this season. And unfortunately, injury just plagued him and, had to miss like 3/4 of the season. He only managed to post up about 178 at bats, but there were some bright spots in there. 19 runs, 5 doubles, a triple, 7 bombs in that time, which is great pace. 16 ribs, 4 stolen bases, and he batted .264. He had an OBP of .298, a slug of .421, and an OPS of .719. This kid, I think, is going to be fantastic. I really do. I am a big fan. Last year he played almost full season, was managed to post 23 home runs in that season with 478 at bats. I think he could have got like another 60 at bats. Probably would have had about 25, 26 home runs, and would have been a fantastic rookie year, right? And the fact that he posted .266 batting average is consistent with this year. So next year, my expectations is he's still going to be like a top 10 third baseman for me. Somebody I'm probably going to be targeting everywhere because he's going to come at a value. As long as he can stay healthy and get on the field, I'm going to be really excited to draft him. I think this kid is going to be hitting 30 to 35 home runs. The power numbers totally support it. He is going to be really good. He's the future of this team, in my opinion. Him and Evan Carter are just going to go off. So the way I look at it like this is, my guy just needs to, get healthy, and I think we're going to see a really strong year where he's going to be the guy we're talking about that we drafted, later in drafts that ended up as a top 25 player. I think the upside is, and that's going to be massive when I think you're going to be getting him outside of the pick 100. So Josh Jung for me, I think is somebody that I'm going to be targeting every which way possible. So, I would be drafting him everywhere. That's just me. I'm going to say add him now, but it's just because I'm still in season mode. Let's move on. Let's talk about Evan Carter. Unfortunately, did not play well after having a fantastic 2023 campaign. And on top of that, then went down to injury with a back injury and missed the whole season. So that's rough. I still don't know what the timeline is for his, is he going to be ready in time for spring? What's that going to look like? But, that this is a TBD. If I know tomorrow he's playing, I'm gonna draft him. Obviously, I'm not gonna draft him as my OF3 like I was, telling everybody in the off season. I kind of want to see if that back injury kind of comes back. And I don't want to, spend a valuable pick like that and, pretty much lean my outfield on a kid that did have a nice rookie campaign in that little cup of coffee at 62 at bats, but and a great playoff run, but the disappointing season, the injury, things like that. There's more that come into play that you have to quantify. So, I'm good with it as an OF4. I'm good with him as a UT spot for next year. I can't wait to see what ADP is. I think I might just be ADP'd out of picking him because I think the hype might still stick around for Evan Carter. So it's going to be interesting to see what the draft cost is going to be with Evan Carter next year. and we're kind of just going to have to evaluate and also to identify what his spring looks like if he's ready for spring. If he's having a good spring and it's encouraging, that draft price is going to fly up, and it might change my mind depending on how good he's looking. I really do hope that he comes back next year with vengeance and says, "Well, hey, I'm here to stay. I'm going to be the awesome player that everybody thought I was going to be. I'm sorry for getting injured," and I'd love that from him. I think that he has a lot of potential and he has a good ceiling, and I can't wait to see what this is going to look like. He's not going to be a knock your socks off kind of home run hitter, but he might be like a 25 home run hitter with a guy that can probably steal about 30 bases and hit for average. So if that's the case, he's going to be a valuable pick overall, and I think that Evan Carter is going to be good. It's just, is it next year? We'll see, and depending on the draft price, obviously. So Evan Carter, just keep back here for now, and we'll figure it out as we go. Jacob DeGrom is our last guy I want to talk about, and obviously he didn't play much of the season whatsoever. He, you know, played about 10 innings. He was coming back from injury, and we were telling you to stash him everywhere, and unfortunately, he could barely play. But when he's healthy, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. The guy just has a long career of being phenomenal. But the last couple of years, last 4 years, he hasn't been able to post higher than 92 innings in a single season. He's had 2 seasons that have in the 60s. 2023 campaign was 30 innings pitched, and then this year 10. So like how are we approaching Jacob DeGrom next year? Well, he's going to be a guy that I'm going to be drafting lower. We're going to take the shot on him, but I'm not going to trust him as like my top 3 arms. Not because I don't think he can't be a top 3 arm. He could probably be an SP1 for you if he's healthy. But I'm not going to fall for the trap where, okay, he's going to be there, but how much is he going to miss? And it's not like he misses a little bit of time. He misses a giant chunk of time. A guy that hasn't pitched more than 100 innings in the last 4 years scares the living bejesus out of me. So if I'm drafting, DeGrom next year, I better have a stacked team that's going to be able to make up for what I'm missing. So that's why I'm not going to draft him as a top 3 arm. I'll draft him as my 4. But, I don't think I'm going to get him at that price. I think he's going to go well above that. Everybody's going to be like, oh, Jacob DeGrom's back. Everybody buys in that next year, and I don't understand why. So for me, I'm going to look at him like this. Depending on ADP, he might actually be a bust candidate for me. And depending on, essentially his health status, what it's going to go on. So again, probably a top 40 arm, and we'll kind of just leave it at that with Jacob DeGrom. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me. It's been a good show. I am super excited to have you guys here with me. So thank you. Please like, subscribe, comment, rate, review. Check out my boy Soli over at Locked On MLB. And yeah, with that being said, guys, peace out. I can hit the right button.